when it comes to the Trump assassination, what is your theory in terms of the underlying intent? Like going back to what started the talk about the Vegas shooting, like who is they in this case in Vegas, Saudi Arabian royalty here.
I come at things kind of naively. So when I look at the Trump shooting, my first inclination is, I hope this is simple and stupid. And I hope this is like Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris 2.0, the Columbine shooters, two lunatics, and that's it. And that's the story. And that this was, some lunatic who decides he's going to put Butler on the map, and that's the story. But no, once you start digging in and you see all the ballistic evidence and you start finding more stuff, you realize, no, this is a sophisticated hit. There's more than one shooter, easily. I mean, we know there's two, there may be three or four. We've got silent gunfire. We've got simultaneous gunfire. There's a lot more going on here than most people understand and realize. And so when you start to see it that way, you start realizing, no. This is not a kid or a bunch of kids from Butler that decided they're going to put Butler on the map. That's not what's going on here. This is sophisticated. And so that takes you to the other end of the spectrum, which is, who the hell could pull something like this off other than people within inside the organization? So we know Homeland Security rolls up to Mayorkas. And that sort of begs the question, were the people who were actually doing the dirty work here American? We were told the kid on the roof is Thomas Crooks. For all I know, Thomas Crooks died in a car accident that night at 2 o'clock in the morning the night before, 4 a.m., and his body was in the morgue. For all I know. I don't know that the guy on the roof's name isn't Sergei Belmakov from Odessa. And Thomas Crooks was killed on his bicycle at midnight the night before. I don't know that. Thomas Crooks, when he was 14 years old, looked a lot like Sergei Belmakov from Odessa. I don't know that that's Thomas Crooks. I see his dad going all over the place with somebody in a hoodie. It's pretty weird. So again, it's hard for me to buy any of their narrative at all. Any of it at all. It's just very difficult for me to accept any of it as fact. And Chris Wray goes in front of Congress and lies all the time. There's no ramifications to him for doing that. So who's behind it? Who wins if Trump was killed? Who wins the most? And who would stand the most to lose if Trump were to win the election and become president? And so I think there's a lot of, typical suspects, right? So there's a whole bunch of people that didn't want to see Trump become president. But who are the ruthless people that stood the most to lose from Trump becoming president that would actually try something like this? In other words, I know that there's a whole bunch of people that would have said, wow, that's tragic and fortuitous in the same breath. But then there's other people I've been thinking about and saying, well, if Trump became president, wouldn't their gravy train end like within 24 hours? And the guy that comes to the top of the list for me is Zelensky. Guy's been siphoning off our tax dollars now through the entire Biden presidency, or since this war started. If Trump comes into office, that gravy train ends before the sun sets, the day one. He's getting rid of that. That's we're not sending any more money to Ukraine to fight Russia. Trump is not going to do that anymore, guaranteed. Which means Zelensky's probably the guy who stands the most to lose financially from a Trump presidency. I mean, Xi in China probably would prefer not to see Trump as the president again. Putin would probably prefer not, but he's going to send a hit squad to kill him? It's like the only person who's stupid enough and crazy enough to do it is a guy who's an ex-comedian who doesn't have any common sense, who's a moron and got a taste of the Bugatti lifestyle and now doesn't want it to end. And somebody convinces him, if Trump becomes president, your gravy train's over, bro. In other words, they manipulated him. just like in the movie Syriana, right? They manipulate people to do things to carry out, prosecute their agenda. So who is they? I don't know. But they are the ones that didn't want to see him be president. And then, who has that kind of motivation to do something of this magnitude, to fund it, to plan it, right? They thought it was going to work. They didn't think, they're going to get caught. The fact that it didn't work, and we've got all this evidence, and we're catching these people, I don't think they planned on this. Now, the question is, does anybody in the Senate and the Congress have the gumption, have this, the character to see this through and to put people in handcuffs? Because, again, if attempting to kill the former president and we don't see anybody in handcuffs, well, then the sky's the limit. I mean, what can't you do? You can do whatever the hell you want. All right, so if nobody goes in handcuffs for this, you and I will talk about next year. You and I will talk about knocking off Fort Knox, because it seems there's no ramifications for anything in this country anymore. And all we would need to do is wear some weird costumes that nobody would believe. Like if you and I both dressed up like alligators and we had 3 other guys dressed up like alligators in alligator costumes, nobody would believe that 5 guys in alligator costumes robbed Fort Knox. They'd cover up the story for us and we'd get away.
Unfortunately for us, we'd probably show up and there would be nothing in the fort. But
yeah, I don't think there's any gold in Fort Knox. I don't think there's any gold there at all. But in other words, it's like we don't get to hear the real story ever, it seems. Ever.
No, that's...
It's just all narrative nonsense. And
that's the frustrating thing.
Hey, you. Do you still have your Bitcoin on an exchange? Don't hold your Bitcoin on an exchange. Take it into self-custody. If you're looking for an easy way to do that, we have the BitKey. BitKey is Bitcoin made easy to use and hard to lose. Take the first step. Get your Bitcoin off the exchange. Check out the link in the show notes. That'll get you 20% off your BitKey, or use the code TFTC20 at checkout.